Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Pokémon Legends Arceus. I am of course playing this on a Nintendo Switch and obviously the game is exclusive to that console. So let's get right into it. What is Pokémon Legends Arceus? Well, it's a semi-open world RPG with turn-based combat and of course copious amounts of monster collecting. This game is, for all intents and purposes, a spin-off from the mainline Pokémon games. There's definitely some familiar elements here and there, but there's quite a few changes to the gameplay that set this game apart from other Pokémon titles that you've probably played before. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about the story and the setting. I can't fully explain the very beginning of the narrative or the very end of it due to spoilers, but I can talk about all of the middle. This game serves as a prequel to Pokémon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, and obviously the recent remakes of Diamond and Pearl. It's set a long time before the other games, and at this point in time, the Sinnoh region was known as Hisui. The wider world is still untamed, and the town is essentially a tiny village where everything looks and feels more traditionally Japanese. Villagers wear kimonos and sandals, and most of them seem to have a genuine fear of Pokémon. Befriending, training, battling, and standing side by side with Pokémon is still quite a rare thing in this time period. When you first start up the game, you'll be able to create and name a very basic character, and then the next thing you know, you're waking up on a beach to some familiar faces, one of which will become your starter Pokémon. The game will then introduce you to Professor Laverton, who'll escort you to Jubilife Village and help you to join the Survey Corps. That's the basic setup for the story, but as usual, I'll leave it there for the sake of spoilers. The Survey Corps, however, is very important as it forms the basis of the entire gameplay loop. As a member of this organization, you'll be venturing out into the wild to research how Pokémon live and document them in the very first iteration of the Pokédex. In this era, the electronic Pokédex hasn't been invented yet, so you'll be helping to create the very first version of the Pokédex, which is basically a large book or binder that documents your discoveries. In most Pokémon games, your goal is to catch or own at least one of each pocket monster. In Arceus, however, you'll have to do quite a bit more to fill out and complete a single Pokémon's entry. Each task has incremental milestones, and a Pokémon's profile is only complete when all of those milestones have been achieved. For example, you'll need to catch each Pokémon multiple times, such as 3, 6, 10, 15, and even 25 times, plus various other requirements such as watching them use a certain move or evolving a specific Pokémon 3 times. Once you feel like you've had enough excitement for one excursion, you can go back to the village by reporting your progress to the professor. You'll gain points for the number of Pokémon you've caught, plus other milestones and achievements. These points go towards increasing your star rank within the Survey Corps itself, and each rank rewards you with new crafting recipes and control over Pokémon up to a certain level. As you explore the 5 open world maps under the looming shadow of Mount Coronet, you'll encounter Pokémon in the wild. You can choose to catch them, battle them, or just ignore them completely if you wish. The Pokémon themselves will react differently to your presence. Some will run away, and some will attempt to attack you. If you take too many hits from a Pokémon in the wild, you'll black out and be taken back to the village. You'll also lose some items if that happens, so do be careful when you're out and about. If you discover a Pokémon that you want to catch while adventuring, you can crouch down to make yourself more stealthy, and to hide yourself even more, you can duck into some tall grass and make yourself all but invisible. From here, you can launch a Pokéball at the one you want to catch, and if you manage to hit it from the back, you'll have a greater chance of capturing it. If an aggressive Pokémon spots you and tries to attack you, running to the nearest patch of grass isn't really going to help you. You really need to get some distance between you and the Pokémon for it to give up on chasing you. To make things a bit easier though, each Pokémon has a few types of food that it really likes, and you can throw it near it to divert its attention away from you while you attempt to catch it. The catching mechanics are a bit more like the Let's Go Pokémon games, where you're encouraged to catch a lot of the same Pokémon one after the other. Besides the 6 Pokémon you have in your party, Pokémon you've caught are sent back to the village and held in the pastures. You can walk up to the lady at the front gate and switch Pokémon in and out of your party. You can also choose to release all of the spare ones that you don't need or want. When you exit the pastures menu after releasing some Pokémon, a man will approach you and hand over some grit items. Grit items are a new addition to the Pokémon series and allow you to raise the effort levels of a Pokémon's stats. Each of the 6 main stats a Pokémon has, which are HP, Attack, Defense, Special Attack, Special Defense, and Speed, have an effort level. Using a grit item on one of these stats will permanently raise that stat. So if your Pokémon has, let's say, 100 HP, and you use a grit item on the HP stat, it will permanently increase the HP stat to 120 without leveling up the Pokémon. Those aren't the exact numbers, by the way, this is just an example, but you get the idea. There are various grit items such as grit dust, grit gravel, grit pebbles, and grit rocks. Dust can be used to raise effort levels from 0 to 3, gravel is used for 3 to 6, pebbles are for 6 to 9, and the rock is for 9 to 10. In order to help you find your way in this world, you'll have a map that shows you places of interest, quest locations, and can be used to fast travel to any area you visited and unlocked. Jubilife Village, which would one day come to be known as Jubilife City, has quite a few shops and services, including a place to buy clothes, a general store, a crafting shop, a shrine, a place to spend your merit points, and a farm that allows you to grow a variety of items. The shrine allows you to spend money on a buff that lasts for one excursion. You can get a number of abilities from this, including things like losing less items if you black out, or being able to take more damage from wild Pokémon before blacking out. Merit points are earned by finding and recovering other players' satchels that they've lost when they blacked out. If you do find one and turn it in, the items that player lost will be returned to them. I don't have Nintendo's online pass, so I'm guessing that the ones I've been recovering are just the kind of NPCs lost satchels, but if you have the online pass, you'll be able to connect to the internet and return other players' lost items. When you turn in the lost satchel, you'll be given some merit points, which you can then spend on items at the kiosk in town. You can also trade Pokemon online with other players here, but again, you need the online pass to do that. In terms of actual Pokemon, the Pokédex shows 242 in the game, which includes variants, legendaries, and new additions, although there could be some weird counting going on with some of the variants. That said, I think there's only 16 new additions, and only 7 of them are actually brand new. The other 9 are simply variants of existing Pokemon. I won't show any of the variants here for the sake of spoilers, but I think you should know that all the starter Pokemon have a variant for their final evolutions. That's Decidueye, Samurott, and Typhlosion. However, I think I should point out that you cannot get their standard forms in this game, you can only get the new variant. Battles in Pokémon Legends Arceus play out in a very similar way to what we're all used to. It's turn-based as always and only has a few minor tweaks to differentiate it. Firstly, getting into a battle isn't a random thing anymore. It's more like the Pokémon Let's Go games where you can actually see the Pokémon in the overworld and avoid it if you want to. In fact, walking straight up to a Bidoof and kicking it in the face won't even start a battle in this game. You actively have to throw one of your Pokémon at it or near it to start a battle. After that, it's mostly the same combat you've come to expect. The only difference is the addition of the turn order and the 2 different styles of attack, strong style and agile style. In the top right corner, you'll see the turn order of the Pokemon taking part in the battle. I actually had this hidden by accident for a while, so if you can't see it in your game, press the Y button while in a battle to display it. Once a move has been mastered by a Pokemon, it will have the option to be used as strong or agile style. If you pick strong style, the move will hit a lot harder, but could cause you to lose a turn. Agile style is basically the opposite. It will deal less damage, but could allow you to act twice in a row. Before confirming the attack, you can actually see how it's going to affect the turn order if you look at the turn list in the top right corner. This can be helpful for using your moves strategically, or when trying to weaken a Pokemon for capture. And yes, that's right, you can indeed catch Pokemon during a battle in the classic way if you want to. Speaking of battles and catching Pokemon, occasionally you'll come across a larger than normal Pokemon with glowing red eyes. These are called Alpha Pokemon. They're bigger, stronger, more aggressive, and harder to catch or defeat in battle. At the beginning, you'll want to stay well away from them because they can be brutally strong and wipe out your entire team pretty easily if you're not careful. Another boss monster type of enemy you'll face is the Noble Pokemon. These Pokemon are sacred to the people of Hisui, and they each have their own warden that looks after their offerings. They glow bright yellow when you first encounter them due to their frenzied state. Your job is to calm them down and stop their rampage. When you battle these noble Pokemon, you'll enter a small arena as your player character, and you'll have to throw bombs at them while dodging its attacks in order to calm it down. At several stages during the fight, you'll have the opportunity to send out one of your Pokemon to fight the rampaging noble. Once you've lowered its HP to 0, the battle will revert back to the bomb throwing and dodging. The battle carries on like this until the yellow bar at the top of the screen is completely empty. It's worth noting that you can't actually catch these nobles, but you can obtain a standard version of them through other means. Evolution, for example. The enemy I'm fighting here is Kleavor, who is a new addition to the series and evolves from Scyther. Catch yourself a Scyther in the wild and evolve it using the Black Augurite item, and there you go, you have yourself a Kleavor. And while we're on the subject of evolving, you'll need to initiate that manually in the party menu now. They won't simply just evolve automatically after they hit the required level like in the mainline games. Oh, and if you were wondering, it is possible to catch shiny Pokemon. I found one quite early on, as you can see, and when they evolve, they do keep their shiny status. When you're out exploring the open world, just keep your eyes open for a little sparkle or a Pokemon who simply looks different from the others in terms of color. So that was a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure I gave you guys a good sense of what this game has to offer. Now though, let's move on to my personal opinions on the game, starting with the stuff that I liked. I think the first thing I want to say in this section is that the game does actually have some good ideas, and it actually does them pretty well in some cases. Perhaps they do lose their charm after doing them 1,000 times, but they do work pretty well regardless. The idea of an open world Pokemon is one that I think we've all had at some time or another, and it's cool to see them going in this direction. It's just something that they've never really done before, and they have to do it on the Nintendo Switch, so, it's kind of brave for them to even try this. I don't think they implemented everything very well, but some stuff does actually work. An example would be the request system. Now obviously this is a very common system and it is a very basic thing, we've seen it elsewhere in many RPGs over the years, but I think a proper side quest system like this has been needed in Pokemon for a long time now. Its execution in the game is fine, the quests are all a little bit dull and a little bit, boring I guess, but it does what it needs to do and it works fine, so that's nice to see. The open world mechanics of collecting material, crafting your own items, hiding in the grass and catching Pokemon are probably the best part of the game in my opinion. I do think the game gets a bit monotonous pretty quickly, but just the act of throwing the Pokeball and the sound of it hitting the Pokemon is still very satisfying. It has that great audio-visual feedback that makes these simple things feel fun to do. The hiding mechanics work really well, and as I say, catching Pokemon is still pretty fun to do, even if you've seen these Pokemon a million times before. And being completely honest with you, I personally enjoyed the Let's Go games quite a lot, and I thought they were far better and much more fun than Sword and Shield was. The way that the Let's Go games handle catching Pokemon is a more quantity-based sort of thing, so now that this game has a somewhat similar idea, I'm quite into it. I quite like the way it works. I quite like the idea of catching multiple Pokemon and being rewarded for that, rather than say just catching a single Pidgey and then being done with that Pokemon forever. I thought the effort system was a pretty nice addition as well. I think it's basic, but it's much more easy to understand and use than the breeding and the IV training that a lot of players use in the competitive side of Pokemon. I tried to get into all that once with, I think, Ultra Sun and Moon, but I fell off of it pretty quickly. That side of Pokemon just isn't really for me, but I do really respect the people out there who do that stuff. It's pretty complicated and kind of obtuse, but those guys make it look easy. Luckily though, even younger children should be able to understand the effort system in Pokémon Legends Arceus. It's simple and user-friendly, and that's a plus for me. I also quite enjoyed the way you fill out your Pokédex in this game as opposed to the mainline games where you just catch a Geodude, for example, and that's it, you're done. You never really have to catch another one, but I think the idea of catching multiples and having other little requirements does make it feel like you're doing research. I think there could have been a few more interesting things done here with this system, but what we do have here is alright, it's decent, and I quite enjoyed it. I think some of it feels a little bit too tedious after a while, like catching 25 Starly, then just to catch another 25 of another 100 different Pokemon. It's, just a tad too grindy in places, but I think it's decent overall. I'm also someone who really appreciates the XP share items in Pokemon games. I think that might be kind of controversial to say, but look, I've spent hundreds of hours in my childhood grinding out one Pokemon's level at a time, one after the other, and now that I'm in my mid-30s, I want my Pokemon to all level up together. I really, really do. This game does give your entire party some XP after a battle, although I believe the main one still gets the most. The Pokemon in your party will also gain XP when you catch another Pokemon in the wild, obtain materials and other activities in the open world, which I think is really helpful. Another thing that I thought was pretty good was the way that the Pokemon learn their moves in this game. As they level up, they learn new moves as usual, but they all get put into a sort of pool of moves that you can switch in and out whenever you want to. As far as I'm concerned, that's a huge improvement. This way you can try out different combinations of attacks and strategies at any time and you're never locked into anything. Sure, in the mainline games you can learn moves through TMs, which by the way aren't a thing in Arceus, but it's just much more convenient here and I really like the way it was implemented. Other than that though, I'm kinda struggling for anything else to say in this section, so I'm afraid it's about to get a little bit rough. Let's talk about the negatives. So here we are, what didn't I like about Pokémon Legends Arceus? Well, basically I was enjoying myself quite a bit for the first maybe, let's say 5 hours. Then from hour 6 to hour 10, I found myself getting less and less interested in the game. It's like it was kind of wearing me down or something. And I think I have one take on this game that might piss off some people and might actually ring true with others. And look, if I say something's bad, it doesn't make it true, and if I say something's good, it also doesn't make it true. This section and the previous one is all just about how I personally feel, okay? If you disagree or agree, it's fine either way. Honestly, it really is. So, I think this game felt great to me at the start because of the simple fact that Game Freak, the studio that makes most Pokemon games, has set such a low bar of quality and effort for quite a while now. This game is alright. it's okay, it's average, but it feels better in the beginning because it's just slightly different and slightly better than what they've put out recently. As time goes on though, you realize that, hour 2 of the game is no different from hour 22 or even 42 of the game. I'm not saying it has to suddenly change into a Mario Kart style racer, although saying that I could actually see a Pokékart game being a thing, but it just has to have something interesting happening somewhere, or perhaps something unexpected, I don't know, just anything. In my spare time, I actually like to create things. I've designed card games, miniatures games, and some video game concepts as well. Now, of course, I'm not a professional or anything like that, and I only really do it for fun, but honestly, I think I or any other longtime Pokemon fans could direct a better Pokemon game than Game Freak at this point in time. And you want to know how I would have handled this game? Well, firstly, if we're going back in time, I would have set this in a place that had zero connections to any existing Pokemon games. I would have created a new region and designed it with an entirely new map. Then I would have designed and created maybe 150 to 200 brand new Pokemon that have no connection to any existing Pokemon. Then down the line, perhaps you could have a similar looking descendant of one of these Pokemon appear in a game that comes after Sword and Shield. Maybe. It wouldn't be the same thing, it would just be similar. I would have had you play as a character who's part of a group of settlers building their village from the ground up. I would have the village start off very small, and then you could use the materials and the different quests to help build new facilities. And considering that the locals would be scared of the wild Pokemon, it would be the perfect opportunity to show humans growing bonds and friendships with the Pokemon as they help build the village. Now, there is a little bit of this in the game. You do see some little additions to the town, and some of the villagers do actually end up liking some of the Pokemon, but the Arceus world just feels really dull and lifeless. Another thing that I think is kind of a no-brainer, I would have personally added voice acting to the game. I think this game was the right time, but again, they didn't go down that route. I would have tried to add some more variety to the outside areas, more than just a few trees and rocks. I would have actually tried to make some really nice looking areas. I mean, how about seeing Pokemon in the wild actually doing something besides just wandering about aimlessly, for instance? And honestly, my imagination goes wild thinking about what could have been done with this game. And I know, it's on the Switch. It's never going to be amazing to look at, and yeah, I agree with you, I really do. The thing is though, it was Nintendo's choice to make an underpowered hybrid console. The Switch is a great console though, don't get me wrong, I really do like it, but it is weaker than most mobile phones at this point. Its SoC chip that it uses was years behind, the times when it was released, let alone now. And just for a second, take a step back and think what this game could look like if it was on the PS5 or the Series X or PC. And I know it's a Nintendo game, and I don't mean a Switch version ported to those machines. I mean, imagine if it was built for the ground up for a Nintendo console that was as powerful as the machines I just mentioned. Think of the visual quality and fidelity you could achieve, not to mention the features you could add. I mean, look at something like Elden Ring's open world. It isn't the best one, right? But imagine if Pokemon could have a world that looked like that for you to explore. Obviously, it would be a lot brighter with a lot less death, but you get the idea. It's not all about the visuals though. I'll always take gameplay and performance over graphics, but the way Legends Arceus looks actively hurts it. Plus, its performance is uneven, I guess that's the right word. The frame rate does dip quite often, and a lot of the time the vistas are just plain ugly. Also, yeah, I do see the low frame rate on the Staraptor flying about in the distance there, but a lot of games do this to cut down on resources, and I did see this kind of thing in Elden Ring when I played it in the closed beta, but it was much less obvious in that game than it is here. I mean, that one just sticks out like a sore thumb. I also think the roster of Pokemon we got here is pretty poor, and I'll be honest, I've never really been too keen on the Diamond and Pearl Pokemon in general, and I don't really like many of the new variants that much, perhaps one or two here and there, but I think that's more of a subjective thing. You might love them, of course, and if you do, that's cool, no judgment here. They just aren't to my tastes. I do understand that this is based on a past version of the Sinnoh region, so having all the Diamond and Pearl stuff does make sense, but for me, it's not that great. My favourite Pokemon has always been Charizard, and yeah, I know everyone loves Charizard, blah blah blah, but look, I picked up Pokemon Red off the shelf in an import store here in the UK in 1998. I read that it was about monster collecting on the back of the box, and I bought it purely off of Charizard's image on the front because I wanted him in the game. He's sort of a big part of my Pokemon gaming history, although sadly, Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard aren't available in Pokémon Legends Arceus. Looking at the Pokédex in general, I think a lot of people's favourites are going to be missing from this game. I think one issue is that nothing surprises us anymore in Pokemon. Every time time a new game comes out, it's like, oh great, a Weedle, or oh look, a Pidgey. You know, we've seen these things so often, it just doesn't have the same effect on us anymore. And I mean, sure, a child who's new to the series and Legends Arceus is their first ever Pokemon game, I could see them being actually kind of blown away by it because they simply don't have any frame of reference. And I bring that up because I'm an old school fan of the Pokemon series. I'm looking at Legends Arceus through eyes and hands that have seen and played almost every Pokemon game ever released, and it just feels like the passion, creativity, and the overall effort is just gone from the series. I think Pokemon Legends Arceus was the perfect excuse for this studio to think outside the box and really come up with some cool ideas and deliver some new features, but sadly, I don't believe that's what's happened here at all. You have an open world that's virtually empty, a story that's kinda boring except for the endgame stuff, lots of Pokemon we've all seen before, poor visuals, and mostly forgettable characters. I can still see how some people might enjoy it though. I'm not as egotistical or foolish to think that what I say is somehow always correct. It does definitely have some things I liked about it. And if you're someone who loves this game, then that's great. I mean, genuinely, I wish I loved it as well, I really do. I just don't, and when I look at the big picture, I found it to be overall quite the letdown. Also, I couldn't really find anywhere else to put this in the review, so I'm just going to kind of tack it on the end here. I don't really care for the black bars that appear at the top and bottom of the screen during a battle. I get that it's supposed to make things look more cinematic, but I found that they just kind of obscure the view a little bit. Due to the fact that you can actually move your character around during battles, I often found myself having to tilt the camera to see the HP bar of the enemy Pokemon. This wasn't all the time, but on taller Pokemon like, you know, Onix, or when you're fighting the Nobles, the bars just kind of get in the way of seeing what you need to see. It's definitely not a big deal, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Lastly, I thought the reuse of Pokemon in the wild areas was also a bit lazy. In the first area, you find lots of Starly quite early on, and that's fine. But then when you get to the third area, I found a load of Starly again. And that isn't even the only times you see Starly. You see him again and again and again in different places, and this goes for many other Pokemon as well. Is it really that hard to place different Pokemon in different places? Perhaps they didn't add enough Pokemon to the game in general, and this was the only way they could think to maybe pad out certain areas. I don't know, but either way, it feels so low effort and it kind of makes those areas become a waste of space. Once you've caught 25 Starly, you don't really need to interact with it that much ever again, so you just kind of end up ignoring large areas of Pokemon. And look, I know I've torn into this one a little bit much more than I usually would, but I'm genuinely a fan of the series. I've been a fan of the series since the very beginning. I want these games to be good. I'm not just some person who's randomly come to this game and said, oh, it's crap. That's not what I'm doing here at all. I don't think the game's awful. I think the game's okay. It's just painfully average because I think so many of us can see the potential of the game. It needs a director with an imagination and someone who wants to push the series forward, and it's so frustrating because, again, a lot of people know what this could be if more effort was put in. Unfortunately, the game actually feels like it's content to just sit there and exist as it does, instead of, exciting and trying to impress its players. And with all of that said, I think it's time we head to the conclusion. In my opinion, Pokémon Legends Arceus is an average Pokémon title, but a subpar game overall. The visuals really aren't up to much, and the gameplay becomes a bit tedious after many hours of doing the same thing. I didn't outwardly hate my time with it, but I definitely didn't love it either. The game just kinda happened and felt dull from beginning to end. There's so many things that could have been done here, and I just feel like they went down the path of least resistance. Don't get me wrong though, I don't dislike it that much. It's got some good things going for it, but overall I found it to be really disappointing. Also, I'm sure that 90% of Game Freak, the ground floor developers and the art team, etc., worked really hard to get this game out, and it's the decision makers at the top that dictate how things go, and frankly, they haven't got a clue what they're doing anymore. Ultimately, this game felt fresh and new at the start despite its poor visual presentation and lackluster gameplay. That, however, quickly wore off for me as I started to realize that the only reason I was enjoying it was because it's slightly better than the low bar that Game Freak has set in recent memory. The most charitable way I could describe this game is just about acceptable, but now that I've finished the main story, I really have absolutely no desire to play any more of it. So there you go, that's my review of Pokémon Legends Arceus. It's out now on Nintendo Switch, and it's available as both a physical copy or a digital download. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.